Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations, with 2 audio adaptations of frightening fiction about victims of circumstance. I'm your host, Paul J. McSorley, and tonight and every other Wednesday night, I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Dominic Eagle and RedBadAndy is Paul J. McSorley, Melissa Medina, Jeff Sturdivant, Nick Goroff, and Steve Taylor. Now, get your ticket ready, take your seats in our theater of the minds, and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our first tale this evening is written by Dominic Eagle and is performed by me, Paul J. McSorley, and Melissa Medina. In a marriage set in a world where sometimes it's better not to ask questions, this husband is plagued by a monumental one. Now, without further ado, I present to you, my wife is lurking in my childhood photos, but I met her at the age of 30. And she looks no younger in the old pictures. Sometimes it feels as if my life has been nothing but an ever-revolving door of grief. I'm only 34 years old, and I've lost everyone to death, rejection, or diverging paths. My parents, my sister, my childhood friends, and countless other loved ones. I feel numb, directionless. Above all else, I feel angry. I hate the world for taking them from me. I hate life for dealing cards from a rotten deck. My mother passed last year. She'd been fighting a lengthy battle with dementia since 2019. I didn't cry when she died. I had nothing left in the tank. I had already endured small, painful pinches of grief over the years. I grieved whenever she lost a piece of herself. I grieved for every one of us that she forgot, whilst there were still those of us left to forget. Those 4 years frightened me. Mom and I were so close, and it broke my heart to see her very soul disintegrate. She was my only remaining family. My dad and my sister died when I was young. And slowly, everyone else vanished too. I can't explain it, but in spite of her deterioration, I think Mom held on to life for me.
I worry, Brennan.
My mother hazily said. You're safe, Mom, I said. You don't need to.
No, I worry about Brennan,
she interjected in a fluster. I'm Brennan, Mom, and I'm fine, I said, sighing.
I worry,
she absentmindedly whispered. When my mother died in February 2023, I was left with one person in the entire world, Olivia. I counted my blessings to have a darling wife who would always be by my side. Until I realized how terribly true that might be. Whilst I was clearing out my mother's attic, I found a box of photo albums, dust-coated antiques that I'd never seen before. Too many painful memories, perhaps, but a tinge of warmth spread through my body as I eagerly flicked through the pages, a fuzzy, forgotten feeling. I remembered being happy as a child. I was surrounded by family and friends. I lovingly tore through the pages, and I was moments away from shouting for my wife to come up to the attic. But then I noticed something bizarre. Olivia was standing in the back of a photo. It was a picture of a day at the zoo with my parents and my sister. Through metal bars at the opposite end of the lion enclosure, I could see my wife standing there. Someone I didn't know as a child. But it was her. There was no doubt about that. Distinctive black hair, fair complexion, and petite physique. She wore a thin, knowing smile that seemed unbefitting of her, or any version of Olivia that I'd seen before. My stomach gurgled nervously, but I smiled and laughed it off. Uncanny, I whispered to myself. Obviously, it couldn't have been her, I told myself. We're the same age and she would have been a child at the time. It's just a doppelganger. I carried on flicking through the pages and then a lump formed at the surface of my throat. My wife appeared again. This time, it was a photo of our family's Christmas gathering in a restaurant. And outside the window, beneath a smoking shelter, a solitary figure stood and watched us. It was Olivia, or a woman who, yet again, looked identical to my 33-year-old wife. Once is nothing, twice is a coincidence, I muttered uncertainly. I frantically tore through the photo album as sweat collected in thick, icy trails on my colorless cheeks. Olivia was in every photo, and she looked no different from the present day. The same woman, always lurking somewhere in the background, discreetly watching, ever wearing that foul grin. My heart thumped fitfully. This was no longer an oddity, a funny peculiarity. It was unsettling enough to see evidence of a person stalking my family, but a person who hadn't aged in 33 years? It was sinister. It defied everything my logical brain knew to be true. I found myself trembling in terror and clawing at my hair. I had stopped turning pages. After seeing my wife skulking in dozens of pictures, I hadn't the stomach to continue. But I couldn't tear my eyes off the page before me. It was a photo captioned, "Yummy Cake, Brennan's 10th birthday party." I was sitting in the back garden on an overcast day. A decadent chocolate cake sat on my lap. My jubilant friends and family surrounded me. I was midway through blowing out 10 candles and the flames leaned away from my pursed lips. There she was again, hiding in a photo from the year 2000. Olivia would have been 10 years old just like me. And yet the camera told another tale. This time, my fully grown wife cowered behind the short fence at the rear of our property. But the top of her head peered into our garden, and I could distinguish her distinctive black hair. Her eyes were bloodshot and thirsty. She was, perhaps most hauntingly, eyeing the camera. It felt as if she could see me in the attic. "You're losing your mind, Brennan," I thought, eyes still unable to look away. "This isn't real. It's all in your—" A sudden wisp of wind extinguished the attic light. My body shivered uncontrollably, and I found myself wrestling with an undeniable thought. It sounded like lips blowing air. Trying to steady my breathing, I anxiously patted the floor of the blackened attic. I wish I wouldn't leave my phone in stupid places, I thought. I wanted to leave, but I didn't trust myself to maneuver through my mother's cluttered attic in the dark. And then my fingers brushed over a familiar smooth surface. Gotcha, I thought, before picking up my phone and turning on the flashlight. I screamed. The birthday photo had changed. The candles on my cake were gone, and I was sitting all alone. No family, no friends, nobody. Not even Olivia. I stumbled to my feet and dropped the book. The floorboards moaned as I shifted my weight backwards. I had to get far from that cursed book, that cursed attic. I twisted to run for the attic door, but I didn't move beyond that first step. My torchlight illuminated something horrifying. Poking her head through the attic opening, Olivia smiled at me. Her eyes mirrored those in the numerous photographs I had just seen. Her pupils seemed darker, wider. Red veins painted the corners, and her eyes rippled ever so slightly as if they were not really eyes at all. I don't know what happened to the woman I married, but that wasn't who eyed me from the attic door. She was a horror, some rabid mouse that had suddenly slithered up the stairs and the ladder. My wife giggled.
I'll lead you from the inside out.
And then the woman plummeted through the attic door, disappearing from sight. Thinking only of escaping, I lunged for the open door. But something seized my ankle, chaining me to the attic. I spun to face my shackle, and my mouth parted in wordless terror. From the open page of the photo album, Olivia's twisted arm and face had emerged. She offered a toothy grin and unhinged eyes as she attempted to pull me into the picture.
Vile bile, so rich. And with our consummation, it becomes complete.
I cried in agony as I was dragged to hell by the thing that I had loved for 3 years. A hellish demon I had believed to be my wife. But it seemed I truly had nobody left. Nothing but a cancerous tumor clinging to my very essence. It was draining the last of my pain, the last of my suffering. I closed my eyes and thought of my loved ones, the loved ones I was certain would shortly see again. As the terrifying demonic limb pulled my leg into the photo album, I prepared to meet whatever fate awaited. All of that anger, the years spent in a perpetual psychological nightmare, for nothing. I visualized my mother's smiling face, and a calmness swept through my mind.
I worry about Brennan.
I started to fib before deciding to unburden the weight on my chest. No, I'm not fine, Mum, but I will be. Suddenly, the hissing ceased. All sounds ceased, and when I opened my eyes, my wretched wife was gone. My ankle was no longer merging with the laminated plastic, but it throbbed painfully. The bottom of my trouser leg bore claw-shaped tears, and it was stained with fresh blood. To be certain the entity had vanished, I cast my phone light onto the book, and the picture of my 10th birthday had returned to normal. I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by friends and family. Nothing could destroy that memory in my mind, but I shuddered as I turned the pages of the book. My smiling wife was still lurking in the photographs. I fled the house and I haven't looked back. It's been a year and I don't fear the memories anymore. I'm moving forwards. I'm learning to love again. I'm learning to open myself to new people and new memories. But I still fear loss. After all, that horrifying woman waits for me. I know she does. I fear the day that I notice her in a new photo. I hope you enjoyed. My wife is lurking in my childhood photos, but I met her at the age of 30, as written by Dominic Eagle with the performance by myself, Paul J. McSorley, featuring Melissa Medina. Our second tale of the evening is written by RedBadAndy and performed by Nick Goroff, Steve Taylor, Jeff Sturdivant, and myself. In it, a simple man who just lost his job is offered a contract for 2 weeks of night security work for $6,000, guarding a strange little store and following a list of strange rules. This is a harrowing tale of paranoia, body horror, and lurking dread. Now, without further ado, I present to you, Working for the Vanishing Outlet of Nightmares.
2 weeks of work for almost $6,000? How could I refuse? That was what I thought when looking at that bizarre listing in an email I had received. It said, temporary night security is needed for local antique and clothing shops. The 2-week contract is $6,000 upon completion of the contract. I was shocked that it was still available when I contacted the store. The owner answered the call and told me I was hired on the phone without asking for any references or my resume. I had never worked security before, but was on the larger side, trained in self-defense, and knew how to aim a flashlight, so I figured I could give it a shot. I had just been laid off from my previous job due to downsizing, and even though security work's not my specialty, I told myself I would make it work for that sort of money. Even back then, I wondered what the catch was to be getting that much more than minimum wage, but beggars can't be choosers. I left with plenty of time to find the place and arrive without being late. It was a strange little store down a disturbingly barren stretch of road, almost 2 miles from the nearest shopping center. It was kind of a bad place if they were trying to sell anything, but I guess it didn't matter as long as their money was good. I pulled into a dingy parking lot and saw a faded little sign that indicated the business was known as The Proud Tailor. They apparently sold antiques and old apparel. They must have made a solid business to pay for this much security. I wondered why it was so much and why it was only 2 weeks, though I guess that it didn't matter, and got out of my car, taking my flashlight since it was already very dark and there were little parking lot lights out there. As I walked through the lot, I almost walked right past the entrance. I had to turn back and do a double take. It was odd, but it almost seemed to look blurry from the right angle, like a heat mirage. I was interrupted while looking at the strange daze when another car arrived in the lot. I walked over to it and met my contact, Mr. Jaspin. He regarded me curtly, thanked me for being on time, and then immediately, without skipping a beat, launched into a tirade of rules for this job that I felt I would need a notebook just to write down and keep track of. Excuse me, sir, what? It was the first of many interjections I had made when hearing about the bizarre tasks I was now expected to perform at my new, albeit temporary, place of employment.
Yes, I know it sounds weird, but honestly, the owner is a pretty weird man, but he pays well considering.
He put on his best appealing smile and continued with the weird list. I listened with increasing incredulity to this man who, besides the owner on the phone, was the only contact I had made thus far when taking this job. After he had gone over 6 of them, I made a note list on my phone and had him repeat them.
Oh my. I hope your observational skills are better than your listening ones. Very well, once more, here are the rules.
I was annoyed by the insult, but was ready with my note app this time.
Hours of security will be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. No taking breaks in the store. Breaks must occur in the external security booth. Lunch break must occur at 2:30 a.m. and must not occur in the building. No touching of any merchandise. Especially no touching of displays. At 1 a.m. precisely, the customer bathroom must be inspected and cleaned if necessary. If there is trash in the receptacle near the back room, please dispose of it in the locking dumpsters outside. No staring at any displays. Back room is off limits except in emergency situations. Trespassers are to be detained, and our contact with the police is to be called to arrange removal.
Is that all? I thought there was a lot, I said, half smirking and nervously laughing a bit after Mr. Jaspin had finished speaking. I gave up on humor when he glowered back at me and decided I should just listen. His friendly demeanor was broken, and he flatly stated that
the rules are the rules for a reason. Keep to them, and there will be no problems. If you do not follow them, then we cannot guarantee your
He paused mid-sentence and corrected.
Cannot guarantee full compensation for the services rendered. Please abide by them at all times.
He humorlessly bid me good night and left, leaving me alone in the parking lot without even having a proper tour of the inside of the building I would be guarding, or any other type of orientation beyond the meticulous listing of rules. This was really weird, and I found myself wishing I had found something a bit more run-of-the-mill and less bizarre, even if it paid less. But I reminded myself of how much money it would be, and I decided to try and ignore the nagging feeling in my gut and get to work, whatever that looked like here. I took a quick stroll around the perimeter of the store. It was not too big, but something about it made walking near and around it feel like it took longer than it should have. With how small it appeared to be from the parking lot, it felt like I could be around the building in 2 minutes flat. But somehow, it took me 5 minutes to get back to the front where I had started. I brushed it off as maybe just being distracted by the new scenery and the barren surroundings. Perhaps as well as the unerring darkness and quiet surrounding the place. At least without light pollution, the moon was visible, but it was faint and everything was still very dark. I decided to head to the security booth and get set up. The security room was very dingy, if you could even call it a room and not just a repurposed tool shed. At least it was well lit since it was so small, thanks to a single overhead light bulb. A small CCTV appeared to be connected to 3 security cameras positioned in the store. I went to switch them on, but they appeared to be dead. I saw a note attached below one of the monitors indicating that the cameras were out of service. It also indicated that a manual building inspection would be required at 1-hour intervals. There was an antique-looking brass key that I figured must be the store's key. I pocketed it and sat down. I was not sure what to do in the booth out here without working cameras. I just watched for people trying to break in around the lot, maybe. I figured I would patrol the perimeter every 30 minutes to get some steps in and see if anything was happening, in between checking in on the store and patrolling inside per the hour mandate mentioned on the note. I brought a few books to read while waiting between patrols and tried to get comfortable on the hard steel chair I'd been given to sit on in the security station. I thought that maybe they could afford to pay so much for the security job because they didn't spend a dime on any amenities for the actual security personnel. After an uneventful hour of sitting in the security shack, as I started to call it since anything more formal would be an insult to actual security stations, I realized I had to get up and head inside to do my rounds for the first time. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the front door again. I saw the strange distortion near it once more and wondered what in the world could cause that hazy effect. I hoped it was not a gas leak or something. I fumbled with the odd key for a moment, and the door creaked open on loud hinges. It was freezing inside, somehow even colder than outside. I didn't think that was possible unless they had some sort of air conditioner on, which would be bizarre since it was winter. I wished I had brought a warmer coat, but I had a job to do, so I pushed inside through the frigid air and into the store proper. There was minimal lighting inside when it was closed. I was glad I had my flashlight, but still wished there was at least a few overhead lights I could turn on while patrolling. Every switch I had found appeared to be shut down, and no additional lights could be turned on. The main floor was not too large, and I decided to just do a circuit around the floor and then once through the middle and call it good. I took a small path to the right and past some shelves with musty books and library paraphernalia. Rounding the corner, I saw some disturbing-looking mannequins near the back wall. They were all wearing old-fashioned, ornate Victorian-era clothing. The faces and general air of the looming figures were very creepy, and I didn't like how the heads always seemed to be facing me as I walked. I figured I was just a bit creeped out by the strangeness of this store and would get used to it on subsequent patrols. I saw a door and restroom sign near the mannequin wall and knew that was on my checklist. I thought I might just clear it now, but the rule said to check at 1 a.m., so I decided to abide by them and check back then. I kept walking, passing by racks of old clothes and wall displays of tools, relics, and even some weapons. I didn't see anything out of order on my rounds for the first time, at least whatever order looks like for that weird store. I looked back briefly into the freezing store, closed and locked the door again, and returned back to the security shack. I went through the motions several more times uneventfully. I had taken my break and just read straight through it. I thought about the break rule, and I didn't know who would be crazy enough to want to take a break or a lunch in that musty refrigerator with those creepy mannequins watching you. At 1 a.m., I checked the bathroom, and it looked unused. Fortunately, there was no mess to clean up. I was leaving when I saw faint red stains near the sink basin. I turned on the water and used some antibacterial wipes to clean it away. I didn't know what it was, but it may have been blood, so it is best to take precautions. When leaving, the creepy mannequins caught my eye again, and I could have sworn I saw an odd red stain on the coat of one that was not there before. I took the garbage from the bathroom, and as I headed out, I remembered I also had to check the other bin. I looked by the back room door to see a portable garbage can. It was very heavy, and I wondered how they could produce that much daily waste. I took both bins out back and took them out to a sealed dumpster. Inside the heavy can be a triple sealed bag. It smelled pretty bad, and I didn't even want to know what kind of funky shit was in it. I pulled the lever on the dumpster to lower the tray and pulled the bulging garbage bag on, along with the smaller bathroom garbage. I pushed it back into place and heard a heavy thumping fall and kind of an eerie squishing sound. I don't even want to know. I returned to the security shack and sat down again. The rest of the first night was uneventful, and I was hopeful it would stay that way for the next couple of weeks. I could just get my payday and not spend any more time at this bizarre place. The next 2 days were fairly uneventful, though the mundane nature of those 2 nights meant that when the hammer fell, I was too comfortable and less prepared for the insanity of the next night. It was Thursday, my 4th night, and I arrived a little late when I started my patrol. I had found broken glass near the back of the dumpster. I thought it was odd, but I was a bit more concerned when I noticed that amidst the glass was what looked like clothing fabric and traces of blood. This set me on edge, but I couldn't find anything else nearby, so I reluctantly returned to the security shack. I wished that I had been given a contact number beside the police line that, according to the rules, was only meant for the time we needed to detain trespassers. I thought maybe I would note it and ask Mr. Jaspin when I spoke to him next. It was time to go into the store and do my rounds. It was bitterly cold as usual, and I saw as I was walking around that some displays had been knocked over, and there was a bit of a mess in the aisles. It was strange that whoever had closed it had not cleaned it up. I was told not to touch the merchandise, so I didn't know if I should put it back. I decided in this case it might be okay. I was not going to steal anything after all, so I bent down and started collecting a few articles of clothing and placing them back onto the clothes rack. When I finished, I looked around and was shocked when the mannequins all seemed to be looking directly at me. Not just the ones on the wall who were already facing the center, but the others. I was getting a bit freaked out, and I started to hear a high-pitched buzzing noise. I resolved to finish up and get out of there as quickly as I could, but then I realized, to my misfortune, that I had to use the bathroom just then. I ran away from the mannequin's staring eyes and used the customer restroom, which I always did since the security shack had no facilities. When I finished, I decided to just take the trash out now and clean up the bathroom. It was only 11 p.m., but I figured I had already touched the merchandise, so why not just get the bathroom done while I was at it? One less thing to worry about later. The garbage by the back room seemed empty, so I left and returned to the security shack. At 1 a.m., I went back inside to do my rounds again, but something was off. The building was slightly warmer, and I noticed a foul smell coming from the bathroom. I had just cleaned there, I thought. How is that possible? I suppressed a shudder and decided to step outside as I was leaving. I heard the smash of glass, and it sounded like it was coming from outside. I ran outside and saw a figure sprinting around the corner of the store. I dropped the bag of garbage and shouted, "Stop!" as loud as I could, but they raced on, and I gave chase. They were moving so quickly that I knew I couldn't catch up. Then they slipped on something and fell. As I caught up, I saw what turned out to be a small pool of liquid. I raced over to the prone form and found a young man. He was panting hard, and what appeared to be blood was all over him. I didn't know if he was possibly a threat. He looked more scared than dangerous. But if he was desperate to get away, he could be unsafe, so I approached slowly. He was small and fairly young, maybe 18 or 19. He had no remarkable features besides a faint scar over his right eyebrow and some sort of tree branch tattoo on his right forearm. "Holy shit, dude, you scared the hell out of me. What are you doing?" I found myself out of breath and struggling to regain my composure.
You have to help me,"
he blurted out, still panic-stricken about something. I didn't know what he was doing. All I heard was glass breaking somewhere, and he was there taking off running. His behavior did not seem to indicate vandalism, but why was he here? Slow down and tell me what happened. Who are you? And what were you doing here? I asked him as calmly as possible to try to de-escalate the situation.
Okay, just...
He took a deep breath and continued.
Just, please listen. I need to find my sister. She was at this store, or whatever this place is, when it was somewhere else. And she went missing.
I listened to him as panic and frenzy started welling up in his voice again.
I don't know how this place is here or why it is, but I need to find her before it's gone again.
It looked like he spoke sincerely, even though I couldn't understand it. What do you mean before it's gone again? I asked.
This place, it's this weird store. It was in a shopping mall. This exact store.
You mean they moved here? I tried to clarify.
No, this exact store.
Look, friend, I don't know what you think is going on here, but I assure you it is just us here. Your sisters are not here. No one else is even here right now, and it looks like you are in a bad way, I said as I looked at his haggard appearance and the blood staining his clothes. I tried to calm him down and took him to the security shack. I told him I would call the police line I was given and that they could come help him find his sister. I didn't know if he was delusional or schizophrenic or something, but I figured I needed help in this case, so I finally called the number. There was a substantial wait, considering it was supposed to be a police line, and someone finally answered.
Stanton speaking.
Was what the terse and fairly agitated voice on the other line said. I explained the situation to him, and I thought I heard an annoyed groan suppressed on the other line, filled by a quick,
I will be right over. Hold him and wait.
Then the line went dead. Real cheery fellow, I muttered sarcastically to myself. The young man, who still hadn't given me his name, was sitting on the floor in the shack, not taking his eyes off the main building. He wouldn't speak anymore, but the panicked look never left his eyes. I started to second guess myself and thought maybe something was in there. I did not know everything in that place, like the back room. Then I thought of the weird garbage I saw after I had already cleaned it. I tried to break the awkward silence and I asked him about the tattoo he had. That's cool. What is that supposed to be? He paused, as if considering if he should answer, and then he finally responded and said,
It's a hazel branch. My sister and I each have one, in honor of our mother, who passed away.
We waited for a little over an hour. I was wondering if the officer would show up and consider calling the normal emergency services, but I didn't want to get in trouble if I broke the rules. I needed that money. It was almost my lunchtime, and I was getting hungry and impatient. I was about to call again when I heard a blood-curdling scream from what sounded like inside the store. Before I knew what was going on, the man stood up and rushed out, sprinting to the main door, and had taken the key with him. He knocked me out of my chair as he sped past, and I fell hard to the ground. I didn't have time to stop him. He was in the store before I could get up and chase after him. Once I got to my feet and rushed for the building, I saw the lights of a patrol car approaching. A large man stepped out. I didn't recognize the uniform. Something seemed off. And then I realized even though he wore a police uniform, there were not any identifying features on it besides just looking like a generic police outfit. His car, though it had lights, did not appear to be city, state, or county sheriff. I did not know what was up, but right then, I didn't care. We needed to see what was happening inside with that scream and the young man. I explained the situation, and the man, Stanton, looked at his watch and grimaced as he said his name.
Ah, shit. Why did it have to be now?
He looked concerned, and I was about to ask him what was wrong when he put a hand up and told me in no uncertain terms,
Thank you for the heads up. I will handle it from here.
I was confused. Wait, handle it? Don't you need help in there? What are we going to do? I asked, trying to hide my nervousness.
No, sir. It's 2:30 a.m. and you have lunch to attend. In fact, for that matter, considering the situation, why don't you take the rest of the night off? It won't be safe in there, and the professionals will handle it.
Wait, what? What do you mean? I stammered out. Someone is in there, and possibly someone else needs help. It could be someone or something dangerous. Don't you need backup or something? I asked, feeling the tension increase. He paused momentarily and looked very threatening as he shifted his gaze back towards me.
I already called backup. They will be here shortly. Thank you again, but you have to leave now.
But don't you at least need a statement or something? I didn't want to be left out of whatever was happening since something didn't feel right.
I just took your statement. Now I am afraid I am going to have to insist.
After he finished the statement, he rested his hand on the grip of his firearm, and I took the hint from there. This all felt wrong. I did not want to leave, but he made it clear I didn't have much of a choice. I considered calling the emergency line and checking if this guy was legitimate, but I noticed my phone was missing as I walked away. I looked back, and the man, Stanton, was speaking on his own phone. I couldn't hear everything, but I made out a few words.
Dangerous.
And
handled.
When I got to my car and was idling for a bit, I heard a loudspeaker yell out that I needed to go now.
This is a potential crime scene. Clear off or you will be prosecuted.
Stanton called out by the door, holding a megaphone. I took one last look behind me and I left. I still feel guilty about that decision. I didn't know what happened, but it all felt wrong. Maybe I could have done more. I did not hear anything in the news about what happened the next day and was eager for some information. I considered calling Stanton again to see what happened, but I decided against it and called the line I had used to inquire about the position. But the line was disconnected now. I wondered what the hell was going on. I arrived a little early just to see what happened. I thought the store hours should have seen it open right now, but it was locked up and no one was around. I wondered if they had been open at all today. I checked the security shack, and as expected, there was no note, no nothing, no indication of anything that had happened. I stepped inside from my first patrol, and I did not see anything amiss. The garbage was very full, but besides that, everything seemed spotless. I couldn't find anything wrong. There were no signs of a struggle. No one was around. What the hell happened here? I said softly to myself. I kept walking, and I heard a crunch under my foot. I thought I had stepped on glass, but I was shocked and somewhat horrified when I saw I had stepped on and crushed my own cell phone. I must have dropped it there, but I can't remember doing it. Besides having a cracked screen now, it looked like it was covered in a dark brownish liquid. I shuddered when I brought it closer to my face and I smelled the metallic tinge of blood. What the hell? I looked around a bit more and couldn't find any other evidence of last night's events. I had a bad feeling that something very wrong had happened here. At 1 a.m., I returned and checked the bathroom. It was spotless, and there was no garbage. I was leaving when I noticed the chill in the building had returned, and I swear I had seen the light from underneath the backroom door. Only one more week work. You can do this, just one more week, I muttered to myself like a mantra and left. Surprisingly, the next 4 days had nothing strange in store for me. Yet because they were uneventful and mundane, they gave me a growing sense of dread that something was going to happen. Yet, day after day of tense anticipation, there was nothing. On the last day of all days, I saw the thing that I can never unsee, leading me to write this account and find any trace of that nightmarish hellscape masquerading as a quaint clothes store. At first, it seemed like the last couple of nights, and I was grateful since after that night, I would be able to get my payday and be done with this sketchy store. On my first patrol, I took out the garbage bin by the back room since it was almost overflowing. It was incredibly heavy, and as I pulled it along, I must have hit a large rock with a wheel, but it went tumbling over. That very same rock or friction or whatever force in play must have cut open one of the normally sealed bags. When it splayed out its contents, I thought I was going to vomit, pass out, or scream. Instead, I just looked on in horrified confusion as there were what appeared to be pounds of bloody rags, rusted surgical equipment, and some strips of unidentifiable flesh. The gory bag was inexplicable, and my mind raced to try to and find some excuse for the grisly contents of the bag. Was someone here doing illegal surgeries or something? What the hell is this? I thought of Mr. Jaspin and his creepy smile. The owner whom I had spoken with on the phone but never met in person, and the weird police officer, if he really was one. I felt panic sinking in at how I was involved in this mess, trying to help them guard whatever this place was. I had not thought to arrive too early on any day except one to check for sure. When I arrived, I didn't see any employees, much less any customers. Hell, I had never even seen the store open, if it really was a store. I was wondering if I was going to be paid or if something bad might happen to me. I left the gruesome bag where it was. I was not going to put my hands on potential evidence, but I realized in horror as I returned to the security shack that I had done that. Now, could I really tell someone else? No one else was here, just me and a bag of bloody evidence of something having happened. If something illegal was happening, how would I prove I was not involved? It's been just me here for 2 weeks. I also thought of the young man, the intruder, a few nights ago. I wish I knew what they had done with him. There were too many bad things that could have happened, and I felt sick at the implication of all of them. I felt guilty too, yet I did not know what I could do now. I resolved to just finish the night, hopefully get paid, and then maybe put in an anonymous report when I was done with these people. I sat and brooded and became more and more paranoid as the night went on. I did not do my rounds around the store since I had no wish to pass that horrifying bag of organic Detri skin. Near the end of the night, I decided to go into the store again and break one of the rules. I had to know if someone was in the back room. Was there someone there the whole time at night? Were they responsible for the strange events that had occurred? At 5 a.m., on my last patrol, I summoned the courage to do it. I went inside, and it felt even colder than it had been the previous night. I slowly approached the back room and bent down to see if I saw the light on the other side. My suspicion was confirmed. There was a faint glow. I paused briefly, took a deep breath, grasped the handle, and slowly turned it. It was unlocked. The smell was awful, and I instinctively recoiled before going in. How could I not smell this while on patrol in the store? I had no idea how it could be this bad and not smell it through the door unless this was recent. I went into a nauseous miasma, covering my whole face as I did so. There was a bright lamp in the corner by the door that had been illuminating the area, and there were shelves with boxes and various office-like debris around. The back room stretched further down, a small hall to the left of the door, and I followed it. This room was not so well lit, so I pulled my flashlight back out, switched it on, almost dropped it, and screamed. As soon as it was switched on, the light shone on two hideous mannequins sitting on what looked like some sort of workbench. They were both upright and staring straight forward, as if watching the backroom door for anyone who came in. I let out an exhale as I tried to calm down, realizing it was just more mannequins and regretting the action I took since it meant I had to inhale more of the horrible air back there. Against better judgment, I stepped forward cautiously to get a better look. The faces on them were horribly lifelike, and something about it was morbidly mesmerizing. I leaned forward to get a look at the one on the left wearing a dark sleeveless jacket that looked fancy and expensive. The face was hideous. Somehow, it looked like they designed it to be in pain or some other less describable emotion. The surface looked so realistic as well. It almost looked like it had human skin. Despite the awful appearance, something looked weirdly familiar, and I noticed an old-looking scar above the eyebrow of the thing. How could a mannequin have a scar? I felt a rising fear as I looked at the lifelike thing, reached out, and touched the hand. My blood ran cold. I felt the hand and it felt warm. I could feel small hairs as well on the surface of the skin, and my mind couldn't handle what happened next. I looked further up the arm and turned it over to see a small tattoo of what I recognized as a hazel branch on the forearm. I remember trying to scream, but only a strangled gasp escaped my mouth. I looked at the female mannequin to the right and saw the same tattoo on its left arm. My mind couldn't reconcile the horrifying truth of the situation, and then, whether it was the breathing in of the foul odor or the disgusting coming out of what I knew to be human bodies turned into these display cases of perversion, I vomited on the floor and nearly toppled over. I stood there, doubled over, panting and retching as I finally regained a bit of composure. It was then that the crowning horror occurred. I still don't know to this day if it really happened or if my disturbed mind just conjured it from the shock of the situation and the memory of speaking to that young man who had broken in that night looking for his sister. But as I stood slowly back up, there was a splitting, tearing sound that flesh and muscles breaking stitches, and I heard a wheezing, croaking voice mumble the words, "Join us." All semblance of sanity at that moment snapped, and I fled the store, grabbed my stuff from the security shack, and drove off as fast as I could, laughing like a lunatic at the impossibility of this situation. I didn't want to be implicated in the situation, so I made an anonymous call to the authorities about what I suspected was some sort of murder, body mutilation, or organ harvesting operation. I did not know if the owner, whoever he might be, would try to cover it all up, but I was not expecting what I heard when I tried to follow up the next day. I was chastised for making a false report and warned about wasting police time and effort. They did not appreciate being sent into the middle of nowhere for serious crime allegations. I didn't understand. So I asked what they meant. Apparently, there had been an investigation and nothing turned up. Not because of a cover-up, but because there was nothing to investigate. There was no store, no business registered at that location, and apparently, there was not even a building there. It was just an empty patch of land. I couldn't believe it. It was impossible. I decided to drive out there and check myself. To my complete shock, sure enough, everything was gone. Not just the store, but the sign, the dumpsters, the security shack, everything. It is like it had never existed. How could they remove the entire store in one night and make it look like it was never here? My mind was grasping at rational solutions, but I could conjure none. I tried calling the number I had called to inquire about the job again, but it was still disconnected. I double-checked the email I had received, the job listing, and somehow it had vanished as well. I even looked online for the business, and all I found when looking for The Proud Tailor was an online shop that sold generic clothes. No odd Victorian-style clothes outlet of that name in this city, this state, or even this country. Nothing. What could I do? No trace was left to investigate. No one could find who owned or operated that nightmare building. There would be no closure for whoever their victims were. As far as the world seemed concerned, the store didn't exist. I started doubting my own sanity over the next few weeks. I wondered if somehow all that time had been some sort of hallucination or a terrible lucid dream, or more like a nightmare. I couldn't sleep for the last few days, so I started writing down the events as I remembered them, whether they really happened or not. However, I received something today that gave me my answer, and I wish to God it hadn't. What I received is proof that it all happened, and I don't think I could bear the thought of those monsters still existing somewhere in the world, wherever they went. What I received was a small manila envelope in the mail. It had no return address indicated on the front, but it was addressed to me, and when I opened it, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was $6,000 in cash. Many of the bills looked tinged by a reddish-brown substance, and a small note simply saying, "Thank you for your services."
I hope you enjoyed Working for the Vanishing Outlet of Nightmares, as written by RedBadAndy and performed by Nick Goroff, Steve Taylor, Jeff Sturdivant, and yours truly, Paul J. McSorley. On to the shows. Longtime resident Otis Gyrie has his very own show here on our network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Eric Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. And Drew Blood's Dark Tales airs Fridays, featuring some southern down-home horror. And don't forget to check out the Fear from the Heartland archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Paul J. McSorley, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.